What's up, everybody? Anybody out there in the chat? We ready to get this thing started. Hopefully somebody can tell me if the sound mix is okay. We're gonna do a little stream beats tonight on the solo show. Yeah. All right. Anybody, can they tell me if I sound good in the chat? We're going to talk about some heavy stuff tonight, and I want to make sure everybody can hear me loud and clear. Good stuff, but it is kind of heavy stuff. Should be a good one. Almost ready to get started here. Just one more minute. Trying to grow the channel through every social media effort that I possibly can, but I could use your help. Likes on Facebook page, shares on subscriptions on YouTube, and likes and upvotes and all that stuff. I stream on Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube all at the same time, so as many ways as you can follow, like, subscribe, or whatever helps me out. And if you value what we're talking about, the average guy over here on the Average People Talking Show, it would help me out. It'd help me out a lot. And every live recording ends up on YouTube in its entirety, so people can go back and watch it as well if they're interested in a given topic. I think that about covers it. Hopefully some more people jump in and join here. In the meantime, let's roll. Oh no! My webcam is once again being weird. I can fix it. There it is. There we are. And we're back. Get rid of this screen here. What's up, everybody, tonight? Boy, do we have a topic to discuss. It's a slightly unusual one for me. Because it touches on a lot of things that I've been thinking about for quite some time, but it's also one of those cases where not a lot of people probably know what I think about it. I've got a lot of different feelings about this subject. Some probably will be a little surprising or perhaps even controversial. But, you know, that's why we gotta talk about this like average people and see what we think, you know, and not make everything so black and white all the time and binary. I think that kind of stifles the conversation, which is why I like more philosophical topics like this rather than straight politics. I mean, there's definitely a lot of relation to politics here, because I know even in my own life, it's been very hard to deal with some people's political opinions lately in a fair way. And sometimes it's hard to let things go. And sometimes there's reason to, and other times there's not reason to. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what it takes for something to turn around. But on my screen here, you can see that I have a poem. And this is a poem from my favorite poet. A lot of people say that he was one of the key poets of the Imagist movement and poetry. I love this poem because it says a lot of things. And the title rolls into the poem, and it's kind of meant to be paired with the first stanza. So this is just to say, I have eaten the plums that were in the icebox, and which you were probably saving for breakfast. Forgive me, they were delicious, so sweet, and so cold. Good poem, not an apology. Now, our boy William was not apologizing here. Even though he says the words forgive me, he's using forgive me in a definition that is not where he's not actually looking for forgiveness for his transgression of eating these plums. He's saying that I was powerless to resist the plums, even though I knew you probably had left them for breakfast. He's saying that, you know, he did something very selfish here. Forgive me is more like excuse my human nature in this context. I'll read it just one more time because I think it's so funny. This is just to say, I've eaten the plums that were in the icebox, and which you were probably saving for breakfast. Forgive me, they were delicious, so sweet, so cold. It's fucking ice cold, man. She was probably really looking forward to those plums in the morning, and he just says, nah, I'm eating them now. We use the word forgive in two different contexts. We use the word forgive in a couple different ways, a couple different definitions. And I think that's important as we move forward here. Also, if somebody in chat can let me know if my audio is good, and that the music's not too loud or too quiet, let me know. Or maybe you prefer no music for this topic, and that's fine too. So this is from Merriam-Webster. They have two different definitions. To cease to feel resentment against. That's what we're asking for when we really want someone to forgive us, right? Like, please give me a genuine pardon for my behavior. Please no longer hold this against me. But then there's also to grant relief from payment of, and that's like in the more financial sense, but it's it's the more casual sense of the word, right? When you're like, forgive me, you know, it's a transactional form of forgive. It's a more about a value exchange. It's not the same as the deep emotional connection of forgiveness that we're looking for. And that's kind of what William's saying here, right? He's just saying, forgive me. Like, you know, don't hold it against me. Don't make me repay these plums in kind. Like, I was hungry. I ate them. You'll have to find a different breakfast. I love this poem. It's so awesome. I'm just going to gush about it for another second. I'm going to flip it around and talk about the word apology real quick. And I said distinctly that poem is not an apology. Here's the definitions of apology as it's listed in Merriam-Webster. An admission of error or discourtesy accompanied by an expression of regret. Apologies, plural, an expression of regret for not being able to do something. I find that definition to be wholly unsatisfactory. Admission of guilt to me, even an expression of regret, is not a complete apology. I'm not satisfied with you just admitting it. There must be more. And that's kind of the problem here. And why I'm going to talk about my philosophy of apologies throughout the show tonight. I'm going to talk about what I think about forgiveness and whether or not it's necessary. I'm going to talk about a lot of these things. So, an admission of error or discourtesy accompanied by an expression of regret. First of all, if there's no regret, it's not an apology. So, like, it's kind of funny that in the definition that's added. Now, it's also a fairly new definition of apology. There's the art, the act of apology, which is a written or spoken defense of a criticized belief or position. There's classes that you can take in school called Christian apologetics, which is exactly in that space, exactly in that spirit, right? Where they're not apologizing as in we're sorry for Christianity. They were apologizing as in making an argument of why the belief is still valid. That's a more philosophical term, apology. And that's the term that existed for a long time. It wasn't the same as I'm sorry. And I think that's noteworthy. And I just wanted to plant a flag there. I'm not sure whether or not it's good that we use the word apology anymore for this. It's possible that when I explain what I'm going to talk about tonight, that we may need a new word. But it's clear that the dictionary definitions of honestly both forgive and apology are leaving a lot to be desired here. If we move on and we talk about the word redemption, it's the act, process, or instance of redeeming. That might be necessary for apology to be good, but I think it's clear that that's its own project, right? And that's its own function. And then there's atonement, which is reparation for an offense or injury. To me, this is necessary for a good apology. The fact that this isn't included in the definition of apology as part of it is a mistake. And then there's justice, which is its own thing as well, right? The process of result or result of using laws to fairly judge and punish crimes and criminals. That's like, there's a lot that needs to be apologized for that's not a crime. There's many people that should apologize for things that weren't crimes. And then there's a lot of cases where somebody's unfairly punished. And if you watched the free will versus determinism episode that I did a couple weeks ago, I don't necessarily really believe in the idea of punishment in the first place. And I think that you can atone without that atonement being serving a punishment. In fact, very often, a punishment that you serve is not atonement. You're not actually... The punishment has nothing to do with you paying any kind of reparation for what you did. The punishment is just something that we do to make us feel good. And that's the next thing I want to say. There's a few underlying assumptions that I hold that you may not, and we can have this separate conversation another time. But I think it's important to understand that these are my underlying assumptions that lead to why I think the way I do about apologies. And maybe you don't agree with me right now. Maybe you never will. But I think it's important. So here's the underlying assumptions. One, we don't have libertarian free will. In just a short while, I'm going to talk about Louis C.K. and what was, in my opinion, one of the best public apologies I've ever read. And in Louis C.K.'s case, if you don't know what happened, I'm going to explain that in a little bit. So don't plant a flag there yet. But in the criticism of Louis C.K. coming back to comedy after a year of being gone, after his transgressions, after he made his public apology, there were a lot of people who, kind of distinguished this. They were really stuck on this idea that he chose to do really bad things, so he should not work in comedy. And a lot of their language just always had this, he chose. Well, again, because I'm a determinist and because I think the self is an illusion, which is, those are two very important assumptions, right? I don't think we have a real self. I think what we experience in this life is simply consciousness and all of its contents. You can have a meditative experience or even a psychedelic experience where you become detached from this egocentric focus, this ego self, and experience ego death. And all of a sudden, free will and the self melts away. So philosophically, I don't believe that the term he chose even makes sense or is justified. And if you're not all the way there with me yet, that's going to make the rest of these assumptions tough to swallow. Because if we hold those things to be true, punishment makes no sense. Human minds are modifiable quantities. And ultimately, our minds, we've determined in neuroscience, what happens in our minds is clearly related to brain states and beliefs. All of that is contained within our mind. And our mind can be modified by a number of external factors in a number of external ways. That's what it means to change your mind. It means that something else has entered into your consciousness that's rerouted it, that's changed it, formed a new belief, and that new belief forms new actions. So another assumption that you have to have is that actions are a direct result of belief. That's a hard one for people, but it's clear to me that it's the case. If I believe I need to take a drink right now because I'm kind of thirsty, I'll take one. It could be any one of 100 beliefs that led to why I decided to take that drink. But no matter what, there is an underlying belief about why I took the drink that related to the action. And again, beliefs are in our mind states are related to brain states, and these things can be modified. Consciousness can clearly be damaged in ways that are very obvious by simply damaging the brain. You're gonna have to accept all of that to come on board with probably the rest of this episode. And if you want to see our free will episode, which lays out most of that, what I just said, I highly encourage you to check out the conversation I had with Chet a couple weeks ago called The Illusion of Free Will. It's on our YouTube channel. So with all that out of the way, let's get into and let's read one of the best apologies I've ever read. Now, I'm going to say some controversial things about Louis C.K. today. At least they're controversial in spaces that I'm not in. But here's what I'll say right now. I'll put my bias on the table. I'm biased towards comedians. I love comedians. I'm biased towards reckless speech. I think that speech should be protected, and I think that speech fundamentally is... I think reckless speech is how we get a lot of progress done. And it doesn't mean that all speech is good or not all some speech causes harm. The reality is we're mortal creatures. We can be harmed. Speech is one such way that we can harm each other. But I relentlessly believe in comedians' ability to say anything they want to say as part of that art. I think it's completely off the table to police them, even if what they're saying now, the one kind of nuanced caveat is if it's clear that they're not actually trying to be funny, their intent is malicious and harmful, and they're up there trying to start a race riot. That would change the game. That's not comedy, right? But I think as part of the comedic experience and as part of trying to be a comedian, you're not always going to get it right. Intentions here matter. Intentions tell you a lot of the story about what's going on because it gives you a clue into the mind of the person. So that's my bias. I love comedians. I love Louis C.K. Genuinely. I think he's one of the funniest people ever. Loved his comedy. Don't, with any comedian. It's not like I agree with everything Louis C.K. ever did or said. People are flawed people. The story of what happened to Louis C.K. is an interesting one. If you don't know, I highly encourage you to check it out. What he was accused of by 5 women in the New York Times, in full detail, is asking them if he could masturbate in front of them. And he never did it unless they said yes. In one case, in fact, the woman who's most outspoken against him, she said no. And so he didn't. He got embarrassed and told her that he had issues and went back to work. And she's the one who honestly was the most angry, it seemed, in the media and was the most coming after him. And that kind of surprised me because it honestly felt like, you know what? He asked, you said no. If that's wrong and that's horrible or incorrect, like, it's really tough to know what's right. Now, there's the problem of he had power over this woman and that he did not realize, and he did not realize how he was wielding it. And he's going to address that in his apology here. But I just want to point that out, that everything that Louis C.K. did is not a crime. I also want to point out, because this will be levied out against me, I have talked about this issue many times before in my personal life. Never in this kind of setting or publicly, but I've often gotten the criticism of you have no ground to stand on here. This isn't something you get to talk about because you're a straight white male, and what do you have to say about this? I myself am a victim of sexual misconduct, very much of the kind that Louis C.K. is guilty of, where someone who had power over me actually did a lot worse things than what Louis was accused of doing. Used coercion to convince me to give them sexual favors, used material power over me, wealth, to seduce me into the situation. That was not easy to go through. And if you want to know that whole story, I've posted it on my Facebook page. I can share it other places. But it is also on my personal YouTube channel. And sometime I may talk about that in further detail on this show. But just so you understand, when you say things like, we don't need to hear about, justifications for, sexually gross people or people who have been accused of sexual misconduct from a straight white male, you're excluding my experience. You're making a comment that's fundamentally sexist, fundamentally, exclusionary. It excludes my part of the story to tell me that I can't have an opinion on this. And so I don't accept the objection, and I will press on giving my full raw opinion of this story. And to do so, let's do it in Louis' own words. This is the complete statement from Louis C.K. This was an apology he offered. I think the allegations came out in 2017. Yes, this was on November 10th, 2017. I want to address the stories told to the New York Times by 5 women named Abby, Rebecca, Dana, Julia, who felt able to name themselves, and 1 who did not. These stories are true. At the time, I said to myself what I did was okay, because I never showed a woman my dick without asking first, which is also true. But what I learned later in life, too late, is that when you have power over another person, asking them to look at your dick isn't a question. It's a predicament for them. The power I had over these women is that they admired me, and I wielded that power irresponsibly. I have been remorseful of my actions, and I've tried to learn from them and run from them. Now I'm aware of the extent of the impact of my actions. I learned yesterday that the extent to which I left these women who admired me feeling badly about themselves and cautious around other men who would have never put them in that position. I also took advantage of the fact that I was widely admired in my and their community, which had disabled them from sharing their story and brought hardship to them when they tried because people who look up to me did not want to hear it. I didn't think that I was doing any of that because my position allowed me not to think about it. There is nothing about this that I forgive myself for, and I have to reconcile it with who I am, which is nothing compared to the task I left them with. I wish I had reacted to their admiration of me by being a good example to them as a man and given good example to them as a man and given them some guidance as a comedian, including because I admired their work. The hardest regret to live with is what you've done to hurt someone else, and I can hardly wrap my head around the scope of hurt I brought upon them. I'd be remiss to exclude the hurt that I've brought on people who I work with and who have worked with, who have worked with, whose professional and personal lives who've been impacted by all of this, including projects currently in production, the cast and crew of Better Things, Baskets, The Cops, One Mississippi, and I Love You, Daddy. I deeply regret that this has brought negative attention to my manager, Dave Becky, who only tried to mediate a situation that I caused. I've brought anguish and hardship to the people at FX who have given me so much, The Orchard, who took a chance on my movie, and every other entity that has bet on me through the years. I've brought pain to my family, my friends, my children, and their mother. I have spent my long and lucky career talking and saying anything I want. I will now step back and take a long time to listen. Thank you for reading. that. Wow. What an apology. What an apology for something that I just feel like I think it's worthwhile to say. The incentives here could easily have been for Louis to do what many other people do in this situation. Say that they're sorry for how they made people feel, which is not sorry, right? That's just you justifying. People oftentimes deflect or say that they didn't really do the things they're accused of. Sometimes they want to dismiss and say it's not that bad or make justifications. Louis didn't do any of that. I mean, he demonstrates throughout this apology, and why I think it's so powerful, that he really understands what the problem was. It's really here. The power I had over these women is that they admired me, and I wielded that power irresponsibly. He demonstrates a clear understanding of what went wrong. It's not what you did only. A lot of times we get stuck on that. It's why you did it. What were you missing? What were you ignorant to that if you had only known would have caused you to do something different? And again, this is where determinism comes in. I don't believe in evil. I believe in ignorance. I think that when someone is aware and fully understanding of the facts of a situation, that will reliably lead them into the path of choosing the right choice. I think it's important to understand some things about Louis C.K. Sarah Silverman, who has been friends with him for forever, right? From very early on. They're similar in age. They were friends, and when they were young, she talked about this in an interview on Howard Stern and said, he used to ask me the same thing, and there were times where she would say yes and watch it, and there were other times where she would say, no, that's gross, not into it right now, and they would go grab a pizza. And I'm paraphrasing her, but that was more or less her words. This was a thing that he liked to do from very early on in his life. And at some point, his power and his influence and his profile scaled. And it's very easy to not be aware of that. I think it's a much more understandable mistake to make, which certainly puts it in the realm of what can be apologized for. At no point was he defensive. At no point did he make a single excuse. He demonstrates a clear understanding of everything that was wrong with what he did. And he didn't even fight for those projects, even though a whole bunch of people were hurt and probably lost income and all these things that paid for it. And that's its own entire separate problem to unpack about someone being canceled, but he himself lost $35 million over this story. So all of these people that were working on all of these shows, they all get canceled. Everything stops. And he doesn't even whine about that, even though he knows for sure it's going to happen in this apology. This whole apology from start to finish demonstrates everything. And the only part that's left to be discovered is will Louis C.K.'s actions demonstrate that this change in his mind was legitimate? Did he really understand it? Or is this the most well-crafted bullshit ever? I mean, because it's like really, really, really well written. So if this is a bullshit apology and he doesn't actually feel these things, he's very good at pretending. Better than just about anybody else that's ever been accused of something like this. Hey, babe.
Hi.
We have a Micah appearance over here on the Average People Talking Show.
Don't mind me.
So, let's go through this piece by piece and I want to talk about, in my opinion, I sent out a Snapchat about this, and, this was my kind of exact quote about what I felt about this. A genuine apology requires that the person apologizing has demonstrated real change, not just in behavior, but in their mind. It requires that they are as bothered by their past actions because of what they now believe is as unacceptable as we are. They have to hate what they did as much as we do, and for the same reasons we do. If they demonstrate with their words and their actions that follow line up with what they have said, then that's a real apology. Hey. So, let's apply that reasoning here. What's up?
Can I just make it a little compliment? That's it, and then I'll go away.
Go ahead.
Why do you think that they have to agree with you about why it was wrong or deserves an apology?
Excellent question. So I'm going to explain that here in a minute. Micah asked, why do I think that they have to agree with you about why it was wrong?
Because, I've done several times in my life.
You should come actually talk into the microphone if you're going to be a part of this.
I've had several times in my life where I apologize because I hurt someone that I love or care about, even if I don't necessarily agree with the reason that they're hurt by it. Does that sound shitty?
I would just say that that's not a real apology. And maybe it's a case where a real apology is not needed. Maybe the game you're playing is not actually to apologize.
No, I mean, I know that, I was apologizing for hurting them. It's kind of like I'm apologizing for the way that I said things. I'm not apologizing for what I said.
I think you're kind of derailing me a little bit here. Because I'm going to explain why I think that's important here in a minute. Through this whole thing. So, but this is why I want you to come on. Because if you disagree with some of these things, we can hash that out and I can explain with you. But, easily? You just come over here and we make it happen? The microphone could be
I can commit to 15 minutes.
Well, do you want to eat first?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, let me finish. Let me kind of go back through this. So, again, let's take that. Let me read that again because we kind of got derailed. A genuine apology requires that the person apologizing has demonstrated real change, not just in behavior, but in their mind. So, one example of where this could be questionable is Mike Vick. Mike Vick, dogfighting ring, kills a bunch of dogs, treated animals terribly, all that stuff. Sure, he had a large apology with his behavior. But it is a justified question of whether or not his mind was actually fully changed or if he just wanted his job as an NFL quarterback back. There is reason to doubt that his actions are sincere. That's the whole point of my whole thing, is the sincerity has to be obvious. And what's required for that? Well, it's required that they are as bothered by their past actions because of what they now believe is unacceptable as we are. All of those elements are required for me. You have to be just as grossed out by what you did and just as disappointed with what you did. You have to believe that behavior was unacceptable, and that should be equivalent to everybody else who experienced it. They have to hate what they did as much as we do and for the same reasons as we do. Here's what happens when that piece is missing. Let's say, in this particular case, Louis' apology for what he did said that he didn't address the power imbalance, right? He doesn't think it's wrong because he held power. He thinks it's wrong because he didn't ask properly if he could masturbate in front of them. Well, then he doesn't really get our point. And for that matter, doesn't understand the women's point that accused him. That's why it has to be for the same reasons that we think it's wrong. Otherwise, it's not a genuine apology. Now, if Louis thought that what he did was wrong, but for different reasons, then he's not really apologizing to the people who deserve the apology at that point. He's apologizing maybe to himself, or demonstrating apologetic behavior or regretful behavior that he wants to change. But at that point, it's very clear that you don't understand the perspective of the person who feels directly hurt by your actions. So that's why I think it's critical that it has to be for the same reasons that we do, right? So let's go through it one more time. I want to address the stories told in the New York Times by 5 women named Abby, Rebecca, Dana, Julia, who felt able to name themselves, and 1 who did not. These stories are true. So obviously, a genuine apology requires that you address every last bit of it. No deflections, no denials, full acceptance. That's pretty clear. Now, some people say that apologies can't have an explanation of the behavior. I actually disagree with that and would take the whole opposite position. I think an apology actually necessarily requires that you say out loud an explanation of the behavior and the things in your mind that caused it. Because if you don't explain to me why you did what you did and how you did what you did and what your reasons were and what was going through your mind at that time, I have no way to know, because we're not mind readers, if your mind has changed. So to me, it's a cop-out when someone doesn't explain their behavior and why it was wrong. It's you not really fully apologizing. So that's another element I think that's really needed, because it comes back to that thing that it has to be clear that they've had a change in their mind that lines up with their change in behavior. And the only way that they can become clear is if they explain what was in their mind before and what's in their mind now. So, does Louis do this? At the time, I said to myself what I did was okay because I never showed a woman my dick without asking first, which is also true. Okay, so he used to think that the only thing necessary for consent was a verbal affirmation. He's demonstrating what he used to think. That's good. Okay. But what I learned later in life, too late, is that when you have power over another person, asking them to look at your dick isn't a question, it's a predicament for them. The power I had over these women is that they admired me and wielded that power, and I wielded that power irresponsibly. So now we have evidence that here's what was in my mind before, and here's what I think now. I realize later in life that when you have power over another person, asking them for sex becomes a very different question. It becomes a estimation of value, right? If they say no, will that hurt their career? It puts them in a predicament that is unfair to them because they're not sure of all the ways that power struggle could be being wielded in this particular moment. And then he acknowledges what power that he had. I had power over these women is because they admired me. And that I was a powerful comedian. And I wielded that power irresponsibly. He says, I have been remorseful of my actions. And I've tried to learn from them. And run from them. Now I'm aware of the extent of the impact of my actions. I learned yesterday the extent to which I left these women who admired me feeling badly about themselves and cautious around other men who would never have put them in that position. I can only assume. So here's what I know about the story. I know that 2 years before this became public, he had already accepted that some of the ways he behaved were wrong, because this had been brought to the attention of other people in the comedy business and people that he had worked with. And he had already started trying to apologize directly to the women who felt bothered by his behavior directly. So it's totally acceptable that he's now just learning the extent of the impact of his actions, because it's quite possible that until they went public with their full stories, they did not disclose all the different ways in which they felt badly or, changed their behavior around other men or whatever. So again, really giving a full detailed explanation of an understanding of why we thought it was wrong and why they thought it was wrong. He goes on and says, I also took advantage of the fact that I was widely admired in my and their community, which disabled them from sharing their story and brought hardship to them when they tried, because people who look up to me didn't want to hear it. Again, he's acknowledging, fully understanding all the different ways in which his power as one of the most popular comedians on earth changed the dynamic of consent. He's clearly recognizing all of it. I didn't think that I was doing any of this because my position allowed me not to think about it. He even is recognizing why he hasn't changed until now, or why it hasn't why it didn't occur to him sooner. He's recognizing what the problem was. It's his very position of power that made it so easy to overlook this. He was just rolling, There is nothing about this that I forgive myself for. Now, that's something I want to come back to. I actually don't think forgiveness is ever necessary. And that's going to be a somewhat unpopular position. I'll plant a flag there for now just because I want to fully explain the apology, and we'll talk about that next. And I have to reconcile it with who I am, which is nothing compared to the task that I left them with. Also recognizing that his task of simply apologizing and working on himself is not comparable to the harm that these women experienced as a result of his behavior. I wish I had reacted to their admiration of me by being a good example to them as a man and giving them some guidance as a comedian, including because I admired their work. That's showing genuine regret for his behavior and recognizing what the correct thing to do would have been. This is meeting all of my criteria here. The hardest regret to live with is what you've done to hurt someone else. And I can hardly wrap my head around the scope of hurt I brought upon them. I'd be remiss to exclude the hurt that I've brought on people who I work with and have worked with, whose professional and personal lives have been impacted by all of this, including projects currently in production, the cast and crew of Better Things, Baskets, The Comps, One Mississippi, and I Love You, Daddy. I deeply regret this was brought negative attention to my manager, Dave Becky, who only tried to mediate a situation that I caused. This is full admission of the entire full scope of everything that was impacted by his behavior. No excuses, no changes, everything. I've brought anguish and hardship to the people at FX who have given me so much, the Orchard who took a chance on my movie, and every other entity that has bet on me through the years. I've brought pain to my family, my friends, my children, and their mother. I have spent my long and lucky career talking and saying anything I want. Again, recognizing his privilege here. I will now step back and take a long time to listen. Thank you for reading. If that isn't a good enough apology, or if it could be better or made better, I'd be all ears. Like, let me hear it. What's he missing, right? Like, I feel like that crosses every line, gets across the whole thing. So let me come back to why I don't think forgiveness is necessary really quickly. Once it's clear that someone apologizes, again, this is because of my underlying assumption that there is no self and that free will doesn't exist. The person that is now looking at this situation, the Louis C.K. that wrote this letter, is fundamentally not the Louis C.K. It's not the same mind that was doing the behavior in the first place. In some ways it is, right? He's still the same person with all these experiences, but this new one changed his mind in a way that's clear and obvious. And so I don't have to forgive today Louis C.K. And I shouldn't forgive yesterday Louis C.K. that wasn't fully aware of how harmful and bad and everything was. The forgiveness is just really not a needed element here. The only thing that is needed is atonement now, right? Which some people might disagree about whether or not he atoned or not. He lost $35 million worth of projects that he was currently working on, didn't do comedy for a year, stayed completely out of the limelight, and directly apologized as best as he could to those women and to everybody else who was harmed by this. If you don't think that's enough atonement, that's fine. I don't think anybody outside of Louis and those 5 women can make that determination. That's my opinion on that. I think that's between them to determine what is full atonement. That didn't stop a massive media turning on Louis when he did decide to return to comedy over a year later. And I think that's noteworthy. I don't think that anybody else has a right to make that determination in terms of what's just atonement. Because, again, he didn't break any laws in terms of what we would deem, preventable by society, interferable by the state. This is all a social contract between him and people that he is in relationship with. And there's no evidence that any of his behavior would have ever led to him breaking any laws ever. In fact, as I brought up earlier, the one woman who was the most upset, who went on many, many media outlets and talked about how horrible Louis C.K. was the most, was the one who said no. And so he didn't do it. He didn't even try to coerce her further. She just said no, and he said, okay, sorry, I have issues. And so nothing ever happened. Simply being asked the question is a harm. You can have your opinion about that. I'll tell you this, as a victim of an actual sexual assault, to me, asking the question is just not equivalent to a lot of other worse things that could be done. Again, he never tried to use any coercion. He never tried to do anything that he didn't anticipate his power, so he didn't ask it correctly. He was not evaluating that situation correctly. But at the same point, I have not heard a single argument ever made as to what Louis C.K. could have done to ask if that was something that he desired, or what the conditions would be where it would be acceptable for him to ask for a sexual experience that he wanted with this person. Is it the case where only the person with a lower amount of power can ever ask for sex? I don't know. Quite frankly, I don't think we have this situation fully figured out. And I think that should be mentioned. I think it's noteworthy that the person, he said no, or she said no, and he walked away. So, yeah, that's that's kind of the whole thing I feel about apologies, forgiveness. And we haven't talked about specifically about atonement. And I have one other thing I want to bring up. But did you want to talk now?
Yeah.
Okay. Jump in here. Me. You don't need your headphones. In fact, I don't even really need mine. That's the cool thing about this, is it works without that. Switch this to... This would really help if we had like an arm. That did it. I think this is the one that we want. Let's see here. Let's just try omnidirectional. Let's see if it does this. It was so fun. All right.
Nothing at all. You gotta scooch over more.
All right, get in here. So you just heard that last bit.
Yes.
Were you talking to the microphone from your side? And I think it's
Hi.
okay. I think it's picking us both up pretty well. If somebody is listening and the audio sucks, let me know.
Who's Turtle Babe?
That's Kelsey.
Oh.
Yeah.
What was I gonna say? What were we talking about?
So we've been talking about
I'm really tired. You have to remember that.
we've been talking about apologies and what is a real, genuine apology. And I read my thing that I had wrote the other day.
Right.
We've been talking about, basically I said this is one of the best public apologies I've ever read.
So
Did you hear me read the whole thing?
I did.
Okay.
I did hear that, and I read it earlier.
Let's do this. This might help. And turn this down. Okay.
Do I need to do something differently?
Just try to get a little closer.
Oh, you want me to be closer to you?
Yeah.
Feel how soft my pants are.
I mean, those are very soft.
So yeah, I was listening to you, and I read that earlier, after, like when we had talked on the phone, because I had realized that I had never read his apology.
Yeah, we only ever read the negative stories.
I'm gonna be perfectly honest. I don't feel like what he did was wrong at all.
Yeah, I think that's a fair. I think that's a fair opinion to have. Now, in the modern day of cancel culture,
sure,
you could be canceled just for saying that.
Absolutely, cancel me. I don't give a shit. Am I allowed to cuss?
Yeah, you can say whatever the fuck you want. I think it's also important to note, because I brought this up earlier. My bias is always pro-comedian.
Oh, absolutely.
Yours is not.
Mine is not. No. I genuinely think that in Dave Chappelle's last special, he crossed the line a little bit. Like,
Sure.
I know that you don't. I don't want to have that conversation with you right now. I'm looking at this as someone who has been a victim of sexual assault.
Sure.
He didn't do anything wrong.
What is your reasoning for that? Why do you think?
When he asked, like, okay, so you told me about Sarah Silverman.
Right.
When he asked Sarah Silverman, hey, can I do this?
Now, important to note, just because I think the situations are different, and I want everybody to be clear, I'm not drawing the equivalency here to the two scenarios, okay? At that time, they were both young, and they are pretty much equals, and have always been in the business.
See, I was going to say that.
They came up at the same time. They were pretty much best friends.
Yeah.
Lived in the same place at one point, and did some wild shit. I mean, she's not an angel herself. I mean, at one point, they were literally playing a game of chicken in their apartment building where they would throw all their clothes like downstairs and then ride the elevator naked and try to like run and get their clothes and put it on without getting caught, which is actually hilarious, but also could get you arrested for indecent exposure.
That's more wrong than what he did.
Okay.
I'm being serious. If I were standing there with my daughter waiting to get on this elevator, and the elevator opens, and there's naked ass Sarah Silverman and Louis C.K., I'm going to be pissed. I mean, I'm going to have lots of questions.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also going to be pissed because I have to now somehow explain this to my kid.
Of why there's 2 naked people in the middle of the apartment lobby?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
When he asked these girls, can I do this? You know, whether they said yes, whether they said no, either way, he asked for consent. And don't come for me. I know you can change your mind about consent at any point.
During.
What do you mean?
I don't think you get to change your mind about it after the fact.
No. You don't get to change your mind about it after.
I didn't actually consent. What?
During, yes. I mean, if you're, like, under the influence of something and you say yes, and then you realize later, like,
you maybe wouldn't
I would not have done that.
Sure.
That's a different story.
Okay.
But, like, if you're just...
What's up, Liam? Is our sound good, by the way, buddy?
Hi, Krabby.
Like, are we both coming across loud enough?
Like...
I should probably, Okay, good.
If you're... Oh my god.
You're fine.
He asked these girls, can I do this? And I'm not ignorant to the like...
The power dynamic.
The power dynamic there. Like, I've definitely been put in situations, not necessarily sexual ones, but where, like, someone will ask me, can you cover my shift for me? And I know that, like, this happened so much when I was a CNA.
Sure.
It's been like, can you cover my shift for me? And I know that they are a favorite of, like, administration or something.
So if you say no...
So if I say no, they're just...
Gonna use that against you.
Gonna complain that about me.
Yep.
And, like, about, like, that sucks. It's a shitty feeling. Like, I know it is. And I...
Because, I mean, fundamentally what you're speaking to...
what does that mean, Crab?
Crab's on some shit. Fundamentally, you're talking about the power dynamic of...
Yes, that is wrong. And I agree that it's wrong. But I genuinely don't think he was sitting there with the thought in his mind of...
I'm going to abuse my power.
These women know they can't say no to me or they won't be able to come up in comedy. So...
Yeah, that was...
I'm going to use this to my advantage.
That was Sarah Silverman's take. And actually, there are a couple of other women comedians who said the same thing, right? They know Louis personally. He was doing the stuff as a kid.
It's not like he Cosby'd somebody. Like...
So...
Okay, that sounds bad.
There's a situation, though, where it could be different, right? Because what if it's more than I'm masturbating in front of you? What if it's the Harvey Weinstein case, where it's like, by the way, I'm president of the Weinstein Company. You know, the people who make, like, all the movies.
So the difference between...
And if you don't... will you have sex with me?
The difference between that decrepit piece of shit and Louis C.K. is Harvey Weinstein was doing it with malicious intent. He knew what he was doing was wrong. The things that he was saying to these girls or these actresses or actors or whatever were things, just from what I've read, were things like, if you do this with me,
then X happens.
Then I can make this happen.
Is that for sure?
Yeah.
I've never actually, to be honest, I can't stomach the idea. I've never dove into the Weinstein case.
It's disgusting.
So, okay. So let me flip that around on its head. Let's take Harvey Weinstein's power level. Super high power level.
Sure, absolutely.
Right? Literally the president of the biggest movie company at that time. Whatever.
They're just looking at our kitchen at this point.
Oh yeah, because like I'm not really in frame there. Like we could like back up the monitor and then like we'll both be in frame more. Can you push that back a little on that side or? Oh, the printer's in the way.
That's what I got.
It's not too bad. So, like...
It is nasty, yes.
What's nasty?
Just how much
all the
power,
stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, so,
has.
but let's say that it's a young, aspiring actress who has not tried to get on any movie at all that Harvey Weinstein is currently like producing or trying to do, right? That we know of.
Sure.
But she's at a party because it's Hollywood, and Harvey Weinstein's there, and he says, "Can we fuck?" And she's like, "If I say no, will I lose on the opportunity of getting on movies later in the future of my career? Because that's Harvey fucking Weinstein."
Right.
Now, so no malicious intent, no whatever.
A small issue here, like a small part that we're not. Louis C.K. is not the Harvey Weinstein of comedy.
No, but that's how these women felt. Like,
I get it, and I want to preface this and say now, I am not taking anything away from these girls. What happened to them was fucked up. Absolutely.
I'm taking a little bit away from the one where he said no, she said no, and so
She
nothing
just sounds
happened.
like, obviously an attention whore bitch, but
I wouldn't go that far, but kind of.
like, haven't you ever heard bad attention is better than no attention?
Well, that's the other thing. I had never heard of her or her comedy, so you know. I mean, that is a possible motive.
In order to... Okay, let's stop talking about Harvey Weinstein because he's gross. Let's go back to the apology thing. Earlier when you said, in order for your apology to be true, you have to believe everything that you did was wrong.
I didn't say that.
Or what did you say again?
I believe that you have to believe what you did was wrong for the same reasons as the person you're apologizing to. Otherwise, what you're doing, by definition, is not an apology. Well, did you miss the part where I said, I think the dictionary definition is wrong? What? Come at me, bro.
Literally, okay, this is completely off topic, but I have said that Alex is the type of person who will look outside and, like, someone will say it's raining and he'll be like, no, it's precipitating.
No, that's not what we're talking about here.
You cannot argue with Merriam fucking Webster.
Sure can.
I don't know if you know this, but when you say things in the world like Webster's says, people know what you're talking about.
Right.
Because it's a fucking dictionary.
Okay, but... So, this is the part you missed. See this second definition?
Okay.
You've heard the term apologetics.
Okay, I really should have read this before I started arguing with you. Because...
This was the definition for literally 1,500 years of English. And then only very, very, very recently did we say that the word apology meant this. We change definitions all the time. Because as English evolves, and as philosophy evolves... So what I'm doing is I'm looking at an apology as a philosophical concept. There's a goal here. There's a goal that a transgression has been agreed to be resolved by two people. That's the only purpose of an apology. Otherwise, it's just wasted breath.
I just disagree.
Okay,
Like,
what else is the goal?
I genuinely think that an apology can simply mean... I'm trying to think of an example. Okay. You play video games.
Yep.
I do not. I mean, for the most part, I don't.
Mm-hmm. You're not a gamer.
Emphasis on the game. I definitely am more gay, though.
That's a fact.
Real fact, yeah. We're like 70-30 here. Actually, he's like the only man I like. Shut up, crab.
Hold on. Are you 70 gay and I'm 30 gay? Because I'm like literally like maybe 1 gay. Like 1% gay.
You're like no percent gay, first of all. Oh, okay. Crab has something to say.
Let's bring him in. That means we gotta unplug the, Hold on, we gotta do this. We gotta change this to this. And we gotta change this to... This is gonna be chaos. A little bit.
Why do you still have the beats playing?
Just for smoothness. Keeping the stream a little happier about a hot topic. Friend of the show, Liam, is joining chat and coming on. Hello, Liam.
Do not come in here on some bullshit, crab.
Yo, you said Johnny's the only man you like? What the fuck?
I mean, like, sexually, yeah.
Oh. Okay, we're cool then.
Really? All of that?
He derailed the whole conversation to defend his honor.
Crab. My dude.
Somebody's gotta do it.
I love you. Like, come on.
Aw.
You're a pain in the ass, but I still love you. Anyway, I think you'll have an interesting take on this. So, you're a gamer.
I apologize in advance. Yeah, it hit me.
You guys are both gamers. I am not.
I think gamer's a little bit of an understatement. I am an elite overlord of the game lands.
For fuck's sake. Oh my god. Your bullshit made me lose my train of thought. What was I gonna say?
You're saying...
Oh, there
We're
have
both
been times...
gamers.
There have been times, like, where I have been like, dude, you're so fucking obnoxious when you play games.
Mm-hmm.
Like, can you please shut the fuck up?
Right.
Crab, I'm not gonna lie, I've said the same stuff about you, my dude. Like,
Wait, what do you mean? How am I loud enough that you can hear me?
That's my fault.
Yeah.
See, that's Johnny's fault.
Most generally it's his fault, but also sometimes he'll have his headphones plugged in and I'll hear you be like, rah! Like a pterodactyl or something. Like
that?
That's not what a pterodactyl sounds like, but yes.
Sorry, I'm a jaybird deep.
And like, you'll say to me, like, later, you'll be like, I really don't like it when you do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I do apologize to you because I am sorry for the way that I said it. I am sorry for what I said, or I'm sorry for hurting your feelings in that way. There is a much better way for me to approach the situation. I can come to you when we're not in that moment and be like, hey.
I see what you're confusing.
Sometimes when you play games, you get too loud, and I really need you to just be more considerate of those around you.
So here's what you're confusing.
So, like, I definitely am apologetic for the way that I said that.
Right.
But I'm not apologizing for what I said.
But, okay, so let's go back to my method and apply it.
Okay.
Okay. Your apology is for the manner in which you were speaking.
Yes.
Not for the act of speaking itself.
Yes.
So I think what you're doing and what you're conflating is you don't have to apologize for saying something. You're only apologizing for the way in which you spoke. The manner, the tone, the speaking, right?
Sure.
Okay, so let's apply this to the manner and the tone of which you're speaking. Genuine apology requires that the person apologizing has demonstrated real change. Not just in behavior, but in their mind.
Yeah.
So I've stopped yelling. I want to stop yelling because in my mind I have recognized that the way I came across, my tone, my yell, whatever, was not acceptable behavior.
Sure.
Okay? It requires that they're as bothered by the past actions because of what they now believe is unacceptable as we are. That means if somebody spoke to you in that way and you recognize that you hurt other people because of the way, right? So you're just as bothered by it as I am, and you want to change the behavior.
Yeah.
They have to hate what they did as much as we do, and for the same reasons we do. Well, the reasons why somebody hates that is because it's harmful and unproductive to use language in that kind of sharp tone.
Yeah.
Even if what you're saying is correct, the tone diminishes the message and just makes people feel badly. And so I hate it when I personally lose my temper or have a tone and don't communicate as best as I wish I could.
Sure.
Okay.
Do you guys need marriage counseling?
No. This is it right here.
What? Why would we need marriage counseling?
I don't know. It just sounds a little concerning. I don't know.
What?
Bro, you high.
Are you drunk? Like...
Bro, you high.
Yeah.
It's all good. Trust me.
He says, yeah.
So
I mean, big same crab.
Again, it is a good apology for what you're apologizing for. I think what you're confusing is I'm not apologizing for what I said. Yeah, you shouldn't have to. You should have the right to express grievances in a healthy and constructive way. No one should have to apologize for that. That's not a beyond the pale behavior. What is a beyond the pale behavior? Saying it in such a way that's hostile, with a tone, yelling, raised voices, inconsiderate. So, what you're apologizing for perfectly meets my definition.
See?
That's why I'm trying to figure out what you're not getting.
No, I get it. Sorry, you just made me think about something else. This is why it's so dumb when people tell their kids to apologize for something.
Oh, because they don't mean it.
You cannot force a child to apologize for something. I get it, up until like the age of like 3. Because like you need real life examples of when you're supposed to apologize to somebody.
Yeah.
Like, that makes sense. When you're like trying to teach them like the situation of like, you pushed your sister down, that caused her to hit her elbow, now she scraped her elbow, and she's hurt. This is a situation in which you should apologize. So that's why, like, I get it when people say things like that to, like, toddlers or whatever, but, like, when I see people, like, talking to, like, their 6, 7, 8-year-old kid, and they're like, you owe her an apology.
What does that mean?
Why? You have to explain to them why they owe that apology. And then at the end of that explanation, if they don't feel that they are sorry for what they did, personally, me, if I'm like the victim on the end of that, I don't want to hear the bullshit. Don't apologize to me unless you mean it.
Yeah, forced apologies are a waste of everyone's time.
That's why, like...
I'd rather you just say nothing.
That's why, like, when Michael Vick apologized, are you apologizing because you're sorry that you killed a shitload of innocent animals? Or are you apologizing because you want your fucking job back?
Well, in his case, I don't know. And I don't know that anybody... Like, that's the problem with public figures, right?
Yeah.
It's really hard to know what's in his mind, what's in his heart. He's done a lot of work to try and atone for what he did.
Yeah, I mean, you know my opinion on this. There's literally nothing in the world I think that he can say or do to make this better.
So this means...
If you hurt an animal in any way whatsoever, shape, form, I don't care if you smack it or something.
So this brings me...
You're a piece of shit in my mind, and I don't want to be around you, and I don't want to associate myself with you, because if you can do that to someone who is literally, or something that is literally defenseless, what are you going to do to me? What are you going to do to my kid? What are you gonna do?
Well, okay, hold on. The reason you still have that question is because it's not clear that they've apologized.
Exactly.
Because what's required for the apology? It requires that they're bothered by their past actions and what they now believe is unacceptable, as we are. And they have to hate what they did as much as we do, and for the same reasons that we do. If my reason for hating it is it cost me my football contract, not a good enough reason.
If his reasoning for hating it is genuinely like, I was a sack of shit, I really shouldn't have done that, I really fucked up, I feel so bad.
I actually don't remember.
Like, I don't remember either. But, like, I think, like, where is it? Is this it?
The Louis C.K. one?
I think that he did a good job. He recognized what he did was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
He stated why it was wrong.
Wonderfully and articulately.
He recognized, like, he recognized within himself that at that moment, he didn't think he was doing anything wrong, but reflecting on it, he realizes, shit, like...
Mm-hmm. So, you believe... This was going to be my next point. I'm curious what Liam thinks. You think there are some things that could be never apologized for?
Absolutely.
What about you, Liam?
Could
Genghis Khan apologize?
I mean,
could Hitler?
Yeah, probably. I feel like there's probably a time span on which the apology must be, what's the word for it, enacted. Yeah. It's like a start and end of the apology, and by the end, the person should have produced a proper apology, and however that's deemable. But yeah, so, I think theoretically anyone can.
So on that topic, like, I'm gonna use like a personal example here. When I had my second miscarriage,
right,
someone who I thought was very near and dear to me said some really fucked up shit because honestly we were both just in really shitty headspaces. And he said to me, "I'm glad your baby died." So here we are. I have now rekindled a friendship with this person, I guess you can say, because he sincerely apologized. He recognized what he said was wrong. He met all your steps, basically.
Okay.
I was wrong because I accepted his apology and I didn't want to. I genuinely, still to this day, find myself resenting him for what he said.
Yeah, because you still feel...
I really hope he doesn't watch this because he's going to know exactly who I'm talking about.
You still feel hurt.
Yeah.
But you can recognize that he's done everything in his power to atone for that hurt. I mean, is that part missing? See, so this is the other thing that I said earlier. For it to be an apology, everything that is within your power must be atoned for. Reparations must be paid. Now, there are certain situations where
I don't think
somebody can do something bad enough, right, that reparations can truly not be paid for the amount of harm that they caused. Now, my question to you is, would it be just or would it be fair to ever ask any human being on planet Earth or say that any human being on planet Earth should do something that they're not capable of doing?
No, if they're genuinely incapable of doing it, then...
That's an ethical problem, right?
Yeah.
And expecting that of them would be...
unethical.
Ridiculous and unethical. Okay, so here's the problem with the Michael Vick question. Has he done everything within his power to atone?
So, I don't know exactly what he's done. From the things that I do know, such as donating to, like, places like the ARL and, like, not just money, but donating his time,
Volunteering.
speaking
Speaking.
against why dogfighting is bad.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure he has like a charity in his name or something. I can't remember what it
Yeah.
is. And like,
And he's gone into the very communities that were practicing it. Well, get in Discord. You got some good sounding headphones? You can pop in anytime.
I just
Yeah, I'm gonna have to tag out for this one.
All right, dog. See ya.
I took a knife to a gunfight here in terms of my brain.
Liam
Peace
is
and love.
too high. Love you, dude. See ya.
goodbye. She's driving.
Oh, I got you.
Wait, so can't she just connect? Doesn't she? Do you have Discord on your phone? Obviously, right? Wait.
No, that's Twitch. Yeah.
Stop touching my knee like that.
Sorry.
Gosh. Oh my god.
I just don't know nowhere else to put my hand.
What do I do with my hands?
Car ran real good.
Good soup.
So
She said yeah.
here's the thing. Michael Vick's a hard example. Once again, with public figures, we don't really know what's within his power to actually
Right.
atone for what he did. We don't know. There are some things where you can imagine that a necessary apology for what you did would require you doing nothing but work towards atoning for that every day for the rest of your life. Hitler would be one such example. If there was an apology that could explain Hitler's actions, right?
Okay.
So here's the thing. Part of the reason why we think the way we do about some of the worst acts ever in history is, number one, we're stuck on free will. And so we assume that people could have made another choice. Wow. You good?
Yeah.
We assume that people could have made another choice. It's me. I give off allergens. I'm making her sneeze. Now, in a deterministic view, Hitler doing what he did was a result of beliefs that he had in his mind. Okay? If you're going in there, I could really use a drink. And
This turned into much more of a process than I wanted it to.
as a result of those beliefs, he did some pretty heinous shit. You know, just because it's we're talking about Louis C.K. tonight, I'll quote a Louis C.K. joke. He killed a lot of Jews. I'll say too many Jews. Okay? Here's the thing. What? You don't know about that Louis C.K. joke, do
One
you?
is too many.
Right, that's the joke. And then he's comparing him to Ray Charles. And then he's like, on the other hand, Ray Charles, so few Jews. Like, Ray Charles didn't kill any Jews. You've never heard that bit?
No.
Oh, that's a funny one. Anywho.
Turning this into Wine Wednesday, bitches.
So, imagine an alternate universe where a technology exists that, we'll call it a pill or a brain surgery or something, that could remove any possibility of you killing another person. You don't have that ability anymore. We've identified the areas of the brain that make you capable of violent murder of another human, and we permanently fix that part of the brain.
Okay.
Okay? So murder has been fixed through medical means.
Okay.
This is not necessarily science fiction. As we know, the the Texas sharpshooter had a tumor pressing on his amygdala, making him more aggressive. Something, a physical property of his brain, was causing him to have a brain state, leading him to behavior that he might otherwise not have done. So it's possible to imagine a future where we get so good at brain science, where we could rewire these horrible parts. But imagine you kill some people before you get the surgery or before you get the pill. Could you apologize? Would it even would atonement even make sense? Because here's the thing about atonement. Atonement is a requirement that the subject who committed the offense, right, pays reparations for what they, meaning the individual, did. But by changing someone's brain in that way and changing their mind, and this is the philosophical question that gets left, is it really the same person? Sure, we use the same name for them. Sure, they were born into the same body. But is their mind fundamentally the same mind as the one that committed those murders? That's a tough question.
So I'm sitting here and thinking, I can't speak for Hitler or any of those people. I'm very much the type of person who is like, I have to be able... I don't have to, but like, I can understand things a lot better if I have a personal experience.
Okay.
I'm sitting here, I'm thinking about the situation with like Sammy.
Sure. I did talk about it on the podcast once, so.
They're good, because I am not in the right state of mind to literally say anything about that. But like, there is absolutely nothing in the world, genuinely nothing, at this point in the world that man could say or do to make me feel like he meant his apology. And that is because he has shown time and time again with all of his court switching BS and all of this, and trying
that he's not apologizing.
That he has zero remorse whatsoever.
Okay, so
do I think that if he would have just went through the motions of court, pled guilty, in 20 years, if he sent me a letter from prison, I could potentially see myself not necessarily forgiving him, but accepting his apology.
Okay.
There is a difference between accepting an apology and, like, forgiving someone.
But again, take my alternate hypothesis. Take my case.
Okay.
What if he just didn't get the surgery? What if his mistake is that there was a pill out there that could have made him incapable of committing that murder? And he failed to take it. And if he had only just taken the pill, if he had only gotten the surgery, then it never would have happened. What I'm trying to do to draw you connection to determinism.
The pill had been offered to him?
That would be different.
Did he know about the pill?
See, now you're realizing that it's not as simple. The reason why we want to understand about causes is because of determinism. Determinism says that all current events happen based on prior causes. Our minds relate to brain states. You pop in the green room, and then I drag you down from there.
Real quick, while we're off topic here, I don't know if you can see this or not, but look at this dope-ass wine glass that my husband
You're going to have to put it up closer to the
got
camera.
me for my birthday.
Here.
If I hold it like this, can they see?
There you go.
It's literally the best present I've ever gotten. Oh, there she is.
So, drag her down. And then you'll have to right-click on her name. And click server mute.
Here?
Yep. And then click off. Anywhere. No, not there. Click like here. You should be able to talk, Kelsey. But we cannot hear you.
Is she talking? No, she's back in the green room.
Pull her down again. Hello?
Hello?
Move her up to the green room and then move us in there. Can we hear you down here? Could be the way I have that channel set up, but could not be. Or it might just be your audio. Alright, well, we'll keep chatting while you figure out your audio. You're not coming through.
Someone commented on your Facebook post.
So,
Go ahead.
the reason why you're asking was you offered the pill.
You can't accept something or be held responsible for not doing something if you don't know it exists.
And why don't you know it exists?
I don't know, lack of education?
And what's the cause of the lack of education?
I do not know.
This could be the society, could be your parents. Could be you have a disability and you're unable to be educated, right? So, let's say you had a person who was a full, strong human being. This is the part that gets really uncomfortable for people, and we're talking about some pretty deep shit. Full, human-sized adult. Full-strength man. But they are deaf and blind. And have no capacity. Don't put that on screen. Don't put that on screen. Don't put that on screen.
JK.
Drag it to that screen.
Go ahead. They have no what?
They have no
Oh, dumb. I thought he was commenting on your video.
They have no capacity for language. And because they have no capacity for language, they don't have any of those prerequisite senses that we would need to understand that they would have language. They're mute, they're deaf, they're blind.
What could they have possibly done to offend you?
Let's say they kill someone.
How?
They're still a full-strength adult.
But they can't see to kill.
Right. But they physically did. They still have full use of their limbs. They pick up something. They're angry.
I just feel like
We can tell that they're angry. And they swing this knife around. And they kill somebody with it.
Why do they think it's okay to swing a knife around when they're angry?
We have no idea. They're deaf, blind, and dumb. I mean, we can't, like, they're deaf, they're blind, they're mute. We have no ability to communicate with them. So we can't know what's in their mind. And what can they know? They don't know much about their experience. That's a tough one, right?
It is.
Because what it demonstrates is that the sense of self that you and I have, that we are a self, that consciousness isn't just consciousness and its contents. Consciousness is an identity that we're constantly identified with. Me, the person steering the boat on the sea of consciousness, directing it. That sense, that feeling, is an illusion. What sense of self does our subject that is missing key senses have? They have no capacity for language. They have no way to express themselves. They're not even sure why they have clothes on. If they're hungry, they eat. And they're not sure where the food comes from because they couldn't see it. Now, there are ways through sensory experience that they could experience love and kindness and positive emotions. But are those emotions the same way that you or I experience them? No, it's a very animalistic type world. It's the same level of consciousness you would ascribe to a cow in the field. And if the cow in the field gets angry about something and kicks your uncle in the chest, killing him, you don't get mad at the cow and go, "Come on, Ronnie, why'd you kill Uncle Joey?" You wouldn't do that. You wouldn't do that. These people are fake, and so is
You
the
are
cow.
never allowed to name cows.
Ronnie?
Why would you name a cow Ronnie?
Spot. I don't give a shit.
Okay.
Do you see my point?
Yes, I do. I do see your point.
The only reason why we think human beings are different is because we tell stories. This is why I started the show with, if you're not on board with my assumptions, my underlying pretext, my underlying assumptions, which is that the sense of self that we have is an illusion, and that free will is an illusion, and the world is deterministic, you're not going to be able to get on board with my premises that anything can in principle be apologized for. Now, the reason I say that is it's obvious that somebody's mind has changed, and that a new person with new motivations and new goals sits before you when they have genuinely apologized. It's not really the same mind that made that choice whenever it was made. It's really a new mind. That's what has to be clear. And it has to be clear why it made the choice, and what changed, and how it changed, and is that change permanent? And that part is important. For a change to be permanent in our behavior, think about something you once believed, and because you believed that, you did certain things, and then once your belief changed, all of a sudden you do something completely different now. Can you think of such an act?
Yeah.
Well, can you talk about it?
Yeah.
Is it asking people to masturbate in front of them in their hotel room?
No.
Oh, okay. So what is it?
So, like, there was a point in my life where the Jesus brain had taken over.
Okay. So you had a religious pretext of worldview.
Yeah.
Okay.
I never hated gays. Like, never. I always was like, I don't understand why God cares. Like, I did, however, think that having an abortion, or thinking about having an abortion, or any of those situations made you a terrible person.
Okay. So what?
Lack of education.
But okay. But I'm looking for an action that you did on a regular basis that was a cause of that belief? Was there anything that you used to do that you now do? Perhaps.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, again, with the Jesus brain, when I was like a teenager and I discovered masturbation, I would get really bad cramps after completing the masturbation.
You can say coming.
And I somehow in my brain convinced myself it was because God saw what I did and he was punishing me.
Okay.
Now I know. No, bitch, it's because you had endometriosis.
This is kind of an abstract example and doesn't really.
How is that an abstract example?
But you didn't change your behavior.
You literally asked me if I did
no.
something before that I still do now.
No, I was saying did something before that you don't do now. Or used to not do something that you do now. Like, I'm looking for a change in behavior as a result of a belief.
Yeah, I used to tremendously, like, judge people for the way that they acted or the way that they thought. Like...
About something specific? Or just in general?
Just in general. Like, I used to... Like...
Okay, I think you're killing me here. Let me give you a better example of me.
As a preteen, I was very judgy of scantily clad women.
Okay, perfect. Great. Something
now,
concrete. Really...
I'm like, please, let your ass cheeks out your shorts. Like...
Okay, so that helps, because that's a more specific, more concrete example.
Mm-hmm.
So before you would judge them,
Yeah.
presumably make comments to friends, to them directly, ever?
Yeah.
Sure, okay. And so you'd hold that against them that they
I
just...
don't like talking about that.
No, it's fine. Because there's redemption here. Because let's talk about what it would take for you to genuinely apologize for that. Or maybe you already have.
Okay.
How did your mind change? Why is it now acceptable in your mind for them to wear whatever they want, let their ass cheeks hang out, as you said? Now, obviously you do have some limitations, because as you mentioned earlier, Louis C.K., Sarah Silverman, naked in the atrium of the hotel, you wouldn't be okay with.
If it were just me standing in that hotel, I'd be like, y'all wild.
So I'm going to suggest to you that philosophically, you might not have fully fleshed that out about your kids, and the fact that, honestly, the reason why nudity is so offensive has to do with our purity culture and our... I don't think in principle there's anything wrong with it. I don't have any problem with the Women's March where they march down the streets of New York topless, and I don't care what kid sees it. But that's a different conversation for a different day.
You're stressing me out.
Why?
Because I'm really tired, honestly.
Oh, okay. So let's wrap on this then.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what changed in your mind? Used to believe slutty clothes not cool. Now we're cool with it.
Honestly, I stopped believing in God.
Okay.
And
what about those beliefs made you judge them? Can you point to a specific one?
I can't honestly say that it was ever because of, like, anything that I read in the Bible or I had heard, like, Jesus say or anything like that.
She's about to break this whole thing open.
It was literally just...
The culture.
The culture.
Yes.
And the people around me and the people who would... I can't even say this came from my family.
Were you, Micah,
yeah,
the cause of the culture?
No.
What caused the culture? The culture that came before it. And the people that started it.
It's like a product of your environment.
So, the Micah that judged these women, could she have chose differently based on all of the factors about her life? In the same culture, with the same parents, with the same friends, with the same churches, with the same environment.
Yes.
Is there... No.
I could have.
No. How?
In my situation. It wasn't my family.
It doesn't matter who it was.
It wasn't my parents. It wasn't my friends. It was
so what
the
choice...
culture of the church.
So what? You could have chosen never to go to church, and then you wouldn't have had that culture.
I could have.
So why did you think you might go to church?
Oh, I'm not comfortable saying that.
My point is, whatever caused you to think, I want to go to church,
Sure.
also you didn't cause.
Right.
And whatever makes you a person who was vulnerable enough to end up in the doors of that church at that moment. Open towards all the beliefs and whatever culture, even if you disagreed with it when you walked in the door, you didn't cause. And you didn't cause your brain to be suggestible to religion in the first place. That's based on genetics and predispositions and things that you were out of your control because you didn't choose your genetics, you didn't choose your parents. This is the whole point of why determinism unlocks our ability to treat people justly. Because we can look at the real reasons why minds change. The Micah now that has no dedication to purity culture and the religions that created it is fundamentally not the same Micah as the one who was judging the scantily clad women for being sluts. Those are two different minds. And they're minds that were changed by something that Micah did not cause. They were external influences and life experiences and relationships that helped you realize that. This is why, if you accept determinism, it really, 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 if you really believe it, if you really accept it, it removes any rational, and I say rational because this is important. I've said the words I hate people before, right? It removes any rational basis for hating any other person.
Every fucking day.
You can't hate somebody else when they're just a endpoint of a bunch of prior causes and their brain states and the environment and their genes and yada yada yada. I can't hate them. And whatever they did, even if it's really harmful towards other people, there is a cause that could be explained. The ability to identify those causes makes this apology right here possible. Right? If I lose the tools of understanding why behavior between interpersonal people happens, if I all of a sudden become blind and deaf and mute and unable to communicate via language, and let's say Braille's off the table, maybe I don't have use of my fingers, maybe I just have stubs for hands,
What
right?
the hell happened to you?
Something bad, but like I have no capacity for language in this case. How could my behavior be modified?
That's fair.
And human minds are sometimes in this predicament. So that's the reason why I wanted to talk about this today, because it does piggyback off of the other conversation of if you accept determinism, then all of a sudden what a real apology looks like is very simply there are now a new understanding, a new set of causes, and a new rationale that'll make it clear that your behavior will be different moving forward. So let me talk about one for me so that I'm being fair.
Can I leave?
Can you just hang out for like 3 more minutes?
I'm so tired.
We're going to wrap up the show and literally at 9.
Ugh.
You're killing me. You're hanging on this long and now you're going to like just
Babe,
punk
I'm
out?
so tired. I worked 12
Fine, bye.
hours.
Go away. You're killing me. I just wanted to be fair and offer one version
I'm
of my
listening.
own. But you're also whining about it.
Yeah? Fuck. I'm allowed to whine.
Okay. All right.
Are you gonna talk?
Yeah.
Do it.
Okay, so one thing that I used to do, and a belief of mine changed this forever. And I'll put it right on the table, right here.
Okay.
I used to spank the kids.
Okay.
When they were younger. You didn't know this?
I mean... Like, regularly?
No.
Okay.
I believed in spanking. At least partly.
Okay. There was certainly a point in my life where I believed in it.
I bought into the arguments. I was ignorant to data and research and reasonable evidence as to not spank kids. And so like my justification for it was, while they're young, it works to correct behavior, yada, yada, yada.
Sure.
Sometimes when they don't listen to anything else, you know, that's kind of a last resort. And as long as you're doing it in that way, it's okay. As long as you're not hurting them in a way that's permanent or bruising or anything like it. Like, you have all these...
It's just crazy for me to think about that, because, like, knowing you now, I'm like...
You have these millions of justifications in your head. And what does it take for your mind to change and for you to offer a proper apology for that kind of behavior? It simply takes reading the right research papers that say that it's never good. And what was the reason why I'd never read that before? Inertia. Time.
Yeah.
Like, just was too busy to think about it. Didn't care. And then until somebody brought it to my attention. And then I thought I should really review this practice. And then I read some things. And it didn't take long, right? I read maybe like 3 articles and was like, never fucking doing that again.
In my personal opinion, there's literally no fucking excuse for it.
But see, again, the term excuse, was I making an excuse? Is that how you're...
No, there's no reason for it, I should say.
That's better. There is no reason for it. You're only doing something that makes yourself feel better and satisfying your own anger.
I agree. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, since we've addressed all that, we do our final segment. You gotta move your leg.
What are we doing now?
The Onion. I end every
yeah.
show with it.
Okay. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thanks for letting me on the show.
You bet. Thank you for the topic. You weren't the only one. But yeah, it's been it's a good topic. I think we covered most of what I wanted to talk about. And now we do our favorite thing to do every show. Nope. We read the Onion. Oh boy. White House warns supply chain shortages could lead Americans to discover the true meaning of Christmas. This is the best. As reports of worldwide shipping issues continue to mount, the White House warned Wednesday that supply chain shortages could lead Americans to discover the true meaning of Christmas. Unless these unprecedented scarcities are reversed soon, hundreds of thousands of Americans could be forced to learn that there's more to life than material objects, said White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki, cautioning the delays in shipping of clothing, toys, and other common gifts had the potential to make this Christmas the most communal and brotherly of any on record. While we're working with shipping stakeholders around the world to fix these problems, we also need Americans to prepare themselves to learn the real reason for the season. Of course, we understand that no one is happy about this situation, but millions of people will have to contend with the reality that their Christmas tree may be shrunken and their presents few. But there's love abounding for all hearts that are true. Certainly no one wants to find out that's what's really important is love and having people to share it with. At press time, concerns about holiday season shortages have increased after reports from around the country that thousands of Americans were already attempting to stockpile that magic Christmas feeling. Oh, and on that note, folks, we're going to end the stream. That is too good. Oh, I wish I could write that well. I appreciate everybody joining tonight. Once again, share this with everybody. If this conversation helped you and was a clear demonstration of the concepts and you felt like I made sense, share this. I think it could benefit a lot of people. So, with that, let's bring up the house lights, hit the beats again, and I love you guys. Thanks. See ya.